Feminism today perpetuates the idea that masculinity is either completely redundant or, worse still, problematic, something that needs to be fixed and put right. It says that masculine traits are the source of all of the troubles in the world and therefore we'd be better off without them. So the message that's given to men these days is, why can't you be more like women? And young boys from a very early age are just being treated as defective girls.
Being a normal boy is a serious liability in today's classroom. Boys tend to be disorganized and restless. Some have even been known to be noisy and hard to manage. Sound like any boy you know? But increasingly, our schools have little patience for what only a couple of decades ago would have been described as boyishness. As psychologist Michael Thompson has aptly observed, girls' behavior is the gold standard in schools. Boys are treated like defective girls.
Men typically embody the hard virtues, while women typically embody the soft. Women are much more emotionally intuitive. They're softer, not just in physical form, but they're more relational too. Whereas men are much more rational. They're harder, again, not just in physical form, but in the way that they relate to people. So if a child was to fall down and hurt himself, the father is far more likely to be the one to tell him just to stand up and toughen up and deal with it, whereas the mother is far more likely to be the one to be kind and gentle and nurse his wounds. And incidentally, the child needs a little bit of both. This is why children raised in traditional two-parent families do so much better in life. The father brings the hard edge, he brings the discipline, or at least he tends to, and the mother brings the tenderness, and together they raise a balanced child. If there's too much of the hard from an overbearing father, the child will grow up timid and lacking in confidence, but if there's too much of the soft from an overindulgent mother, the child will grow up entitled and spoiled and bratty. And that's one reason why in this fatherless generation, we're getting more of these. Now remember that in 1967, when the Cultural Revolution happened, we started rejecting the hard, you could say masculine virtues, and we pursued the soft instead. And that's why the postmodern era is the era of feminism, a time when we elevate feminine virtues and reject or diminish masculine ones. And this is a problem. So in this episode, I want to remind us first of all of the benefits of masculinity, but also and mainly just to stop us pitching the two against each other as though they're enemies. As we've been learning in this series, we need both the hard and soft virtues in equal measure. James Brown once sang, "It's a man's world, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl."
But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl.
The verses go on to express just some of the ways in which men built civilization and ordered society. In the first verse, he talks about how men invented cars and trains and electric light bulbs, and he's right. Carl Benz invented the car, Richard Trevithick the train, while the light bulb is credited to Thomas Edison, Joseph Swan and Hiram Maxim. If the song was 10 hours long, he could have mentioned a myriad of other male innovations too. How Adam Smith created the monetary system, John Napier the decimal system, Alexander Cummings the flushing toilet, Kirkpatrick Macmillan the bicycle, Joseph Niepce the camera, James Maxwell the colour photograph, Alexander Wood the hypodermic syringe, Alexander Fleming penicillin, Franklin Volta and Faraday the discovery of usable electricity, Robert Watson Watt the microwave and radar, John Dunlop the pneumatic tyre, John McAdam tarmac roads, Alexander Graham Bell the telephone, John Logie Baird the television, William Cullen refrigeration, William LeBaron Jenney the skyscraper, Charles Babbage the computer, Tim Berners-Lee the internet, how Albert Einstein discovered the general theory of relativity, or how James Madison wrote the US Constitution. Most of the infrastructure and technological advancements that we enjoy today exist because of men. Now feminists will argue that it could easily have been the other way around. That women could easily have been the ones dominating the fields of science, invention and discovery in this way, but they were just being oppressed by men and arbitrary gender roles. They were being chained at home and being forced to churn out babies and make soup instead. However, that feminist narrative doesn't line up with reality. You see, women today have true emancipation and have the exact same access to science, technology, engineering and mathematical jobs as men. And yet, only 12.8% of the STEM workforce, as it's called, are indeed women. In other words, women could go into those fields now, but overwhelmingly have decided that they just don't want to. Women don't want to be out in the rain digging holes, hammering, riveting, laying pipes, mining, analysing bugs, or working out the mechanics of an internal combustion engine. They just don't like it. They like that men will do that stuff for them. And believe it or not, men also like doing this stuff. I know it's a little weird, but shoveling, building, getting dirty, muddy and sweaty, even picking up some cuts, bruises and aching bones along the way, men kind of like this. It's what they were designed for. The feminist narrative that men force women to stay at home and make babies just isn't true either. This is clearly a natural desire for women. From a very early age, little girls gravitate towards dolls and enjoy pretending to be a mother to them. From a very early age, they develop a natural interest in fashion and beauty products, and they start to dream about having a husband and a home. What are boys doing at that very same age? Well, they're building forts, they're getting muddy, they're looking at bugs and having fights and playing sports, all things that will help them one day to be the future builders, mechanics, engineers, scientists or soldiers that we need. Our genetic programming reveals itself in our very earliest years. Is it a broad generalisation to say these things? Of course it is. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. You get women who love building sheds and fixing cars, and you get men who love being stay-at-home dads. And to be honest, there's not a lot wrong with that. If that's who you are, that's who you are. You'll notice in this video that there is a girl playing amongst a horde of boys, but that's kind of the point. There's one girl amongst a horde of boys. In other words, she is the exception to the rule. You will get exceptions to the rule, but the point is that the exception doesn't negate the rule. And indeed, we see this rule everywhere we look. And this is important because feminism says that traditional gender roles are just some arbitrary Western social construct. But if that were true, we would expect to see different types of social construct around the world. Society is ordered in a different way. But that is not what we see. In fact, we see the exact same type of social construction everywhere we look. Everywhere, all around the world. Even in isolated jungle tribes completely cut off from the world, the gender roles within those communities conform to an extremely predictable pattern. Why? Simply because that pattern fits with reality. It fits with the truth of who we are as men and women. Here's an experiment from a Dutch television show called Expeditie Robinson that kind of illustrates what I mean. They placed a group of men on one desert island and a group of women on another, and the test was to see how both sexes would go about establishing a civilization. Now, while the men instinctively set about doing what men do, that is building infrastructure, shelters, sleeping areas, dining tables and rotas, the female island didn't do any of that. There was no instinctive desire to. So this is the moment when the two camps are mixed up for the first time and the men and women get their first look at each other's islands.
Voor Walter is het een behoorlijke schok wanneer hij voor het eerst geconfronteerd wordt met het vroegere vrouwenkamp op Ouma.
Je hebt op de Jordaan het wat opgebouwd met een aantal mensen. En dan zuinig geweest op de voorraad, alles netjes aan de kant gehouden. En dan word je door het lot van je maten weggetrokken en op een ander eiland gedumpt, waar ze dan toch iets losbandiger met allerlei dingen zijn omgesprongen. Jullie hebben in ieder geval flink wat pannenkoeken gegeten. Dat is een puinhoop en dan heb je wel zoiets van, jezus, moet dit ook allemaal op orde gebracht worden.
Walter.
I know.
Ik kom ook wel zo van de koude kamers thuis. Weet je. Ik ben nog blij dat ik tenminste nog mensen om me heen heb waar ik toch gewoon graag mee te doen heb. Dus,
Het was bij ons wel iets comfortabeler.
ja, op zeker.
Daar zullen we best niet te veel over zeuren, hè? Want,
Nee, we moeten proberen om er iets van te maken. Dat weet je.
De dames misschien nog geïrriteerd geraken nog.
Ja, dat is ook niet leuk.
Dat is niet bedoeld.
Nee.
De aankomst van Kamp Noord op Menserib verloopt in een veel opgewektere sfeer.
Kamp Noord! Dames, het heeft niet geregend, dames. Rondkamp, tafel, hier.
gezellig.
Hier kun je slapen.
De dames zijn blij dat ze op een manneneiland zijn beland.
Je zou zo denken, bij vrouwen is alles heel netjes en ordentelijk. Maar het was dikwijls een chaos bij ons. En dan kom je inderdaad hier En dat is alles heel strikt en netjes.
De mannen van Kamp Zuid zijn druk bezig het eiland wat leefbaarder te maken. De vrouwen kijken goedkeurend toe.
Ik moet je zeggen, het ziet er stukken schoner en gezelliger uit. Dan krijg je er zelf ook hoe langer hoe meer zin in. Ja, er is wat ruimte geschapen. Het is gewoon gezellig, leuk.
En netter.
Ja. En nou nog wat waslijntjes hier en daar, zodat al die rotzooi weg is, want dat ziet er ook niet uit. Maar, nee, leuk.
Ik heb ooit een keer een interview gedaan met een sociobioloog en die zei als het aan de vrouw had gelegen, dan leefden we nog in het stenen tijdperk. En ik begin er steeds meer in te geloven.
Dat moet je niet zeggen.
Nee. Dat is toch waar? Kijk nu. Wij zijn echt een stelletje slonzen bij elkaar geweest.
Nou, dat wil ik mezelf toch niet laten zeggen, hoor.
Ja, maar het is wel zo.
Het is wel zo, helaas.
Sorry.
That last statement is the kind that would outrage most feminists today. But it was actually a feminist writer, Camille Paglia, who said it. She wrote, "If civilization had been left in female hands, we would still be living in grass huts." So the point is just that masculinity has in fact done a lot of good for the world, and it continues to. It's not something that needs to be fixed. It's something that we should be glad exists. And trying to knock these instinctive desires out of boys is going to do society a lot of harm. We need masculinity. But now we mustn't miss the second part of James Brown's song, because it contains just as much wisdom. It may be a man's world in the sense that men naturally provide the framework for society, but this world really would be nothing without a woman or a girl.
But it wouldn't be nothing, nothing without a woman or a girl.
You see, men may build a house, but it takes a woman to make it a home. Men may construct exterior walls and tile the roof, but it's the women who furnish it and beautify it and make it a warm, attractive place to live. It's the women who bring children into it and who fill it with warmth and love. Without a woman, it's just an empty box. It's a dead carcass. Women bring it to life. Indeed, that's what women do generally. They bring forth life. Similarly, men may build the framework for a town or a city, but without women, this is all just metal and concrete. It's the women who turn these places into communities. Charles Murray said, "Social capital is the academic term for the resource that makes American civil society work. It has organised things like teaching English to immigrants or serving on the town council. It's also the guy who shovels snow from the sidewalk of the old lady who lives alone across the street. It's parents at PTA meetings, churchgoers organising Christmas plays, candy stripers at the local hospital, and neighbours keeping an eye on each other's houses when no one's home." The point is that many of the important forms of social capital take more time than a person holding a full-time job can afford. So who has been the primary engine for creating America's social capital throughout its history, making our civil society one of the sociological wonders of the world? People without full-time jobs. The overwhelming majority of those people have been wives. Every aspect of family and community life gets an infusion of vitality and depth from wives who are not working full-time. If you live in a place that you cherish because it's a great community, think of the things you have in mind that make it a great community, and then think about who bears the brunt of the load in making those things happen. It's the women. Women in the traditional role of homemaker have time to form bonds with neighbours. They make connections, invite people over for barbecues, they bake, get involved in church groups, school events, amateur dramatics, choirs, and turn the bare infrastructure of roads and buildings into a warm place to stay. Men don't do this. They're too busy with their projects and they're not really as relational anyway. Men enjoy that women will do this for them. Jerry Seinfeld once said that women socialise their husbands, and it's true.
Observing you throughout the years, you've become a lot more open to meeting people. And again, this is from afar, and I think it's from your wife.
There's no question about it.
So your wife kind of took you out of that. Is she the social one?
Yeah, she's a normal person. She likes things that anyone would like. Just being a human being.
Yeah.
I have none of that.
My wife calls me a cat. Like I'm always hiding underneath the couch, and I got to be coerced to come out.
Well, women do this for men in general. Women socialize men.
Yeah.
We're kind of beastly, you know, and we're just about work, survive, earn, survive, eat, survive.
Again, this is mostly true, and it also tends to be the case that women are just the glue for families, never mind larger communities. Women are more intuitive, men are more logical, women are better at multitasking, men are better able to focus on a single task. Women can give birth to life, men are better at protecting that life. Women are more flexible, men are stronger. The lists go on. And when you put these gender attributes side by side, you discover something amazing, that the skill sets of men and women are complementary to each other. In other words, the strengths of each compensates for the weaknesses of the other. And this is why all throughout history we've understood that if we put our natural skill sets together and work as a team, assigning ourselves life roles based on what we naturally do best, we can do amazing things. Camille Paglia again says, men have sacrificed and crippled themselves physically and emotionally to feed, house and protect women and children. None of their pain or achievement is registered in feminist rhetoric, which only portrays men as callous exploiters. Men at their best regards a woman's life as being more valuable than his own. And so he's traditionally given of himself, even broken himself, to serve and protect women. Now, this used to express itself in many simple ways. For example, men would stand up when a lady entered or left the room to honour her. He would give up his seat on crowded public transport so that he'd be uncomfortable so that she could be comfortable. For the same reason, he'd take off his jacket and give it to her if she was cold, even if it meant that he'd be cold as a result. He'd walk on the side of the street nearest traffic and puddles so that he'd take the hit and protect her if anything happened. And he'd sleep on the side of the bed nearest the door so that he'd be the first in line to take on intruders. And he'd even go to war to lay down his life for her freedom. When the Titanic sank, it took 1,450 lives, but only 103 of those were women, 7%, the rest were men. Why? Because the men believed that the women's lives were more precious and valuable than their own, and so prioritized lifeboat spaces for women and children. They freely sacrificed themselves by dying in the icy waters so their families could live. It was feminism that changed all that. Feminism slapped men on the face for such well-meaning chivalry and told them that it was condescending. It whispered to women that men were getting the better end of the deal and that they should compete with men for their traditional roles. No longer were men and women working together, assigning the roles that best suited each sex, but there was now a competition on. The war of the sexes began. Furthermore, it told women that men shouldn't be trusted as leaders and that it was time for them to take control.
Men have to step back and women have to step forward. I am marching here today because women have to rise up and take over and take our country out of this patriarchal, racist quagmire that we're in.
And this is the real root of feminism. Corrupted women who've had bad experiences with corrupted men and who now hate them.
I don't like white males. You're a misogynist pig.
How so?
Because you're a white male.
Now, why is it important that we stop this enmity between the sexes and start working as a team again? Because in the battle of the sexes, both sides lose. When a wife refuses to respect her husband's leadership and nags him or competes with him, he loses self-esteem, he becomes discouraged and closes off emotionally. She then mourns that her husband has become so passive, he begins to feel redundant, she feels resentful, the marriage falls apart, both end up miserable. Kids grow up without a father, social problems arise out of that, and we get a generation of entitled snowflakes. Women who prioritize a career over husband and family often end up regretting it too. It turns out that sitting in a grey office cubicle all their life, when they could have had the joy of raising children, just wasn't that great a trade. Of course, there should be freedom for those who do choose a different path. There will always be exceptions to the rule. But the feminist narrative should not be allowed to override the truth. That's the point here. Earlier we saw that feminists are campaigning for women to be frontline soldiers. Well, they subsequently discovered that not a single woman could pass the basic physical requirements. Yet rather than accepting the facts that women just aren't cut out for frontline combat, feminist pressure meant that the British government then lowered the standards to let some token women through. Similarly, in May 2015, the New York Fire Department admitted their first woman despite the fact that she failed the functional skills training test. Ignoring facts like these could have a high price one day and even cost lives. The truth is that women today are free. At the time of making this video, the British head of state is a woman, the British Prime Minister is a woman, most of the leaders of the various political parties are women. The wage gap theory has proven to be a myth. Women have the exact same opportunity to go to college as men do. Women are simply free. Do they still face unique pressures? Of course they do, just as men do. Each sex faces unique pressures because they're different. Feminism today then is simply about division and hatred of masculinity. This isn't good for either side. Let's all reject these divisive, hateful lies of feminism then, and no longer see each other as enemies or competitors, but once more as collaborators, and help each other along life's way. When we do that, we'll all be better off.